And my next guest, as I said, is someone that many of you have heard, seen, incredible drummer. His name is Zoro. Zoro, welcome to the
Thank
program.
you, Kelly. Glad to be here.
Should I reveal your real name?
We could save that for when they get the book.
Okay.
It'll be a little nugget for them.
So, Zoro, you, in terms of success as a drummer, drop some names here.
Sure. So I started in the early part of my career in 1983. The first big gig I got was with Philip Bailey, the lead singer from Earth, Wind and Fire, which for me was like a dream come true because that was my absolute favorite band growing up. I used to dream about
That's
meeting them.
my
I would
favorite.
dream that I'm going to meet them on a plane, and anyway, it happened. Then I went on to play with New Edition, and oddly enough, how I got that gig was Lenny Kravitz is the one who recommended me when he was just a young kid. So I played with New Edition for years, Bobby Brown, did his stuff during the My Prerogative, Don't Be Cruel Roney era. I introduced Whitney Houston to Bobby Brown.
Wait, stop the presses.
Yeah,
You introduced Whitney Houston to Bobby Brown.
I did. I physically am the one who introduced him. 1989 at the Soul Train Awards, Whitney came up to me by the side of the stage and said, Zoro, 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 I want to meet Bobby. Introduce me to Bobby. And I said, well,
Wow.
as soon as he's done dancing with his routine with his dancers, I'll introduce you guys. And she was all giddy to meet him, and I introduced him. And
Amazing.
that's how it all started.
You know, the irony is, I got to just interject this.
Yeah.
I interviewed Whitney Houston at Newark Symphony Hall. She was doing a dedication or a tribute for a charity for
Yeah.
children, as she would do every year. And she was wearing the famous, I think it was 4-carat diamond
Oh, yeah, yeah,
ring
yeah.
that she was given by Bobby Brown.
That's a
But
lot of
wow,
my
what
prerogative.
what a story.
Yeah, no,
What a
well,
story.
Bobby and I were really close and worked with him, and then I worked with Lenny Kravitz for many years, and then I worked with Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons also for many years, and lots of different people throughout. So it's been 40 years of drumming around the world with various different artists, which has been an absolute blast. It was always my childhood dream was to do that.
In fact, it was a childhood dream, and you write about this childhood dream, which seemed like the impossible dream.
Yes,
Because of all that you went through as a child.
yes,
And you wrote this incredible book about your remarkable mother.
yes.
And the book is, I found it so riveting that I could not put it down.
Thank you, man.
Because of what your mother endured, persevered to make sure that her children would grow up to have the kind of life that you're living. Talk to me about Maria.
Well, Maria was my mother. The book is called Maria's Scarf. I wanted a title that was poetic. I wanted a title that was mysterious, like who's Maria? What is a scarf? On the cover of the book, there's a picture of my mother looking beautiful in her heyday wearing a scarf, and then I'm 7 years old wearing her orange scarf. And so I wanted something that was evocative and emotional, and that's what God gave me was Maria's Scarf. And I wanted to write a book that honored mothers because the office of motherhood is one of the most those are the unsung heroes of the world, the mothers and fathers of the world. But I didn't have a father, but thank God that I had a mother who was as strong as she was, because a mother can never be a father and a father can never be a mother. You can't replace the other people. But I'm living proof that with the love of a mother, no matter what we went through, poverty, abandonment, racism, every kind of, you know, trial and tribulation known to man we went through as a family because she raised 7 children with no fathers. Not only did I not have a father, I had a very untraditional family in that I had no uncles or aunts that I grew up with, no cousins, no grandparents, no anybody but my mother Maria and my siblings. That's all we had. And that's not most families. Most families say, I got an uncle, I got a grandpa. So, but we became a very tight-knit family because we relied on each other to survive all of life's blows. And, but she had this stalwart, incredible faith and this optimism. And she used music a lot to set my heart to dreaming. She would put on these songs like High Hopes and Young at Heart, and she caused me to be a dreamer. And that, what she gifted me in that was the ability to see past my circumstances by faith and just peer into the future with vision and with faith that these things are going to happen. And I just truly believe them in my heart because my mother said that they can happen.
One of the things about your mother is that she grew up in Mexico.
Yeah.
And she was really someone in a high
Yes.
profile family, a prominent government family.
Yeah.
And then everything turned around for her.
Yes. Well, yes, she was the daughter of a Supreme Court justice, and so she grew up in a very aristocratic, diplomatic, political family with power. Her father was the one who brought President Truman to his only visit to Mexico City. My mother would entertain President Truman, and all the Mexican dignitaries and movie stars. So she had this amazing life, but by the time I was born, that life was gone with the wind, right? And so, but my mother always carried herself as the person she was inside. And it took me many years to understand how she was able to look in all these situations and still be dignified, even though people would put her down. And when we moved from Compton, California, to a place called Grants Pass, Oregon, that was the first time I experienced extreme racism. But we had each other to protect ourselves because we weren't super well received. But all of those things, and this would be my word of hope to everybody in the world. We all endure pain. We all endure prejudice in some way or another, setbacks, rejection, being overlooked, all those things that happen to me. But if you keep your heart soft and you keep your heart right, those become the strengths of your life. They become the purpose of your life. So I grew up with a father that abandoned me. Incidentally, he was a drummer, but I never spent a day with him growing up. So that shows you how strong genes are. But the only thing he left me by accident, was a set of bongos. And there's a picture in my book with those bongos underneath my stroller, and I'm 18 months, having no idea that was prophetic, that I would become a drummer. And so God has a way of justice. God has a way of vindicating you, right? It's like the very thing he wanted to be, I became, and more, right? And so, but the thing is, if you keep your heart soft, there's a scripture I love, and it's Proverbs 4:22, 4:23, I think. It says, "Above all else, guard your heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for from it springs forth all of the issues of life." So every issue that we're going to struggle with in our life is an issue of the heart. Bad things happen to all of us, but how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to repeat the cycle? Are we going to overcome it? How are we going to respond to the trauma in our life? And if you keep, because every issue is a heart issue, right?
Yeah.
Forgiveness, bitterness, love, resentment, jealousy, it's all issues of the heart. So I have guarded my heart all of my life. I am still the same kid on the cover of the book, the same 7-year-old kid wearing his mother's scarf. I still dream like that kid. I've protected that guy from not getting bitter or jaded when people have lied about me or stolen from me, or kids made fun of me at school when I was the janitor at the high school. Like, I've guarded myself, and in doing that, it's allowed me to still love people. It's allowed me to give people grace, and it's allowed me to take the pain of my life and make it the purpose of my life, because I have been a spiritual father to countless people in my life, and I have fathered them in a spiritual, loving way, because of what I didn't have gave me the heart to care for them, because I know what they need. They need what I wish that I had. So it made me a radical encourager, and that's my choice, because you can either let the hurt and pain, and people go, "Well, weren't you mad at God for all those things that happened to you?" I've never been mad at God, because God didn't make my father abandon me. God doesn't make people do bad things. They do that all on their own, all on their lonesome, by their own sinful selves. So I don't ever blame God, or my mother never waved her fist at God for the circumstances we were in. She always just prayed and believed he would get us out of them. And so I just go, you know what? We have choices to make. We all experience hardship. But if you let that pain turn into your purpose, you will be a strong person making a difference everywhere you go. Because honestly, Phil, Kelly, we don't have compassion for people until we've been through something.
Right.
And when you've been through something, then you can care. You care because if your life's just good and everything's gone, you don't care about people, because people are self-centered by nature. But pain and suffering makes you go, I feel for that guy. When I meet kids or young musicians at the airport, or they recognize me, or it could be young or old, and they'll say, "Oh, you're Zoro." And I go, "Who are you, man? What's your name? Oh, can I take a picture with you? Because one day you're going to be famous." And then I want to say, "I met you when you were 12. Hey, here's a pair of my sticks." I use that opportunity to love on them, to speak a word of life over them, because I've had many people in my path that God sent. Yes, I didn't have a father, but he sent different people with the Father's heart along my path to water me here and there. I was in the Big Brother, Big Sister program, and my big brother from that program is where I played on the first real drum set I ever hit. There's different people, when I look back on my life, that God provided to give you that fatherly pat on the back. And so he knows your situation. He sees that. So the hope of my story, and it is a hopeful story, is that all these things can happen to you, and God can still do miracles in your life if you have faith, if you trust Him, and then if you do your part. You must labor and toil after the vision or dream that He gives you, because the Bible says the Holy Spirit is the helper, not the doer.
Right.
We are the doer, and then when you do it, then He helps you, right? But a lot of people, they become victims of those things, and then they never do anything with their life because they let themselves be the victim instead of the victor.
And you went through a lot that could have kept you downtrodden. You had people try to take your dream away
Yeah.
from you. And at the top of the show, I mentioned how your dream was an impossible dream that became a reality. Um, how did it happen? Because you weren't always playing drums, yet every time you sat down to play drums, people were amazed at your natural gift and your ability.
Well, first of all, that would be a thank you, a shout out to God, because none of us, you're a very talented man. You're a very talented news reporter. You're a very talented
Thank you.
musician. But any talent that we have, can we actually say that we earned it?
I didn't earn it.
We discovered what was free. So mankind creates nothing. He creates. God created everything. We create nothing. We construct from what was already created. We construct things from things that He already put in the universe. He put rhythm in the universe. He put the gift of rhythm in me. I never create anything. I construct from what's already the materials that are there, right? And so with me, it's like I just recognized that I had this propensity for rhythm. I was always banging on things. The world had tried to keep me from it until I was 16, until I was a janitor at my high school. And one of my jobs was to clean the band room, and the band director discovered me banging on the drums. I had never taken a lesson. I had never owned a set of drums, but I could play. I mean, I wasn't great, but I could hold a beat, and he saw my natural talent. So he saw me, and then he put me in all the school band programs, and that's how I got in that's how my whole career started, was being a janitor at my high school. But I worked very, very hard on the craft, and I spent hours and hours practicing and studying. So I took the seed of potential that God gives us. Everything He gives us in the form of a seed, and that seed is potential. So it's kind of like, hey, I've given you a magic bean, but if you plant it and water it and fertilize it, it will grow into be like a beanstalk, and magic things will come from the seed, but you never created the seed. You never created the bean. You just abided by the principles I put in the universe. Plant it, water it, protect it. So people will come along, and people in my life came along and to try to steal the dream away, to say you're never going to do anything or you don't have any talent or whatever. We cannot let those people determine our future, because God wants you to develop that potential and turn it into that magnificent tree that it can be. But in the end, you've got to remember that it was all from Him. It's kind of like if you're whatever, if you're like Bill Gates' son or the richest guy in the world's son, and you're boasting about how you've created these successful businesses and you've made $10 million. Yeah, but your dad was Bill Gates and he gave you $10 million to start with. So it's God gave you $10 billion of potential. So you can never really brag about what you did. You can say, I worked really hard, but hey, my father gave me an account to start with, and this is how I was able to
That's a
build
good
it.
analogy, yeah.
Back with more of Zoro in just a moment on America's Hope.
Look, I can't do this interview without going down uh, some into the fact that you've played with some incredible people and you've had these incredible experiences. The one thing, I don't want to reveal everything in your book, but you revealed how this was a night you were playing for New Edition, and it was before the entire world, or at least the entire country,
Yeah.
because you were on a television show, and your thought was, Mom's going to see me.
Yeah.
My mother's going to be sitting at home,
Yeah.
and she will see me playing on a national platform. Tell me about that
Yeah,
experience.
well, that was 4th of July, 1985. And the book starts, so there's a prologue and then there's the introduction. And the introduction is called Wind Beneath My Wings, because it's really about my mother's wind beneath my wings. Incidentally, every chapter is named after a song. So every chapter in the song has a meaning of the theme of the chapter. So that's called Wind Beneath My Wings. And so I'm describing as a 22-year-old kid what it's like to look out in a sea of humanity with like 1 million people in DC. But the thing that I'm most excited about besides playing with them and playing on national television, is that my mother is going to be watching from California, and that I could say, Mama, you were right. I was going to do something fantastical with my life. When I was 7 years old, I wanted to do my school pictures for second grade, but I just didn't want to look like all the other kids. I wanted to be different, and that's part of when you're an artistic person, which you are. There's something in you that's demanding that you don't want to look normal. It's you don't even know it yet, but it's the Dr. Seuss thing that says, why fit in when you were born to stand out? You know what I mean? And so that was just kind of my motto. And I'm like, I don't want to look like everybody else. I want to look cool and special. So I said, Mama, I want to wear your scarf for my school picture. And she's like, No, mijo, you can't wear scarves. It's the United States. They'll beat you up. This is not Mexico. And I'm like, but I don't care. And then I had to talk her into it. I said, well, Elvis Presley wears scarves and Tom Jones wears scarves and they're cool. And then she said, oh, mijo, okay, you got me there. So she kneels down. She kneels down and ties her orange silk scarf around my neck. And then she whispers in my ear, she goes, one day, my son, my precious son, you'll do something phantasmical with your life. And that was her own word.
That word.
Because it was her own mixed word. She was trying to say fantastic and amazing, and with her little Mexican accent, it just became phantasmical. She goes, you're going to do something phantasmical with your life. So as I'm playing before a sea of humanity in 1985, a sea of revelation hit me as I'm looking out at the largest crowd that still to this day I've ever played for, because even if I played arenas, that's 100,000 people. But when you're playing in D.C. and it's 4th of July and there's no venue, it's a sea of humanity from 1 to 2 million people, right? Epic. And all I'm thinking about is the sacrifice my mother made to come to the United States that made it possible for me to live this impossible dream, that if she hadn't made those sacrifices, I wouldn't be doing it. And all her prayers and all of her telling me I was going to do something phantasmical and amazing with my life. And I was playing for millions of people, but I was playing for an audience of one, my mother, because she never got to be the movie star she wanted to be. That was her dream, and that's what she was doing in Mexico. And I'm like, she had to pass that torch on to me, and by me living my dream, she was able to live it through me. And that's all I was thinking about on that stage. And then I thought about, wow, here I am playing for a sea of humanity, but I was the kid who dug my clothes out of a Goodwill drop-off box. I was the kid who found a book in the trash that said boys judo, and then became a self-proclaimed judo expert and started teaching judo lessons for 25 cents to kids to make a buck. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I became the master because I have the book, and that's how I had to survive. And so and that kid is now on the stage against all odds, playing with the hottest group at the time, New Edition, and it was very Forrest Gump, very Rocky, Rudy Blindside, and so it's like one of those things where you can't help but cheer for this kid and this mother, because when you learn what they overcame for him to live the dream, you'd have to not have a heart to not cry and feel something, because we're all underdogs.
It's an amazing, phantasmical story. But let me talk to you real quickly about your phantasmical experience with Philip Bailey, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Lenny Kravitz. Philip Bailey.
Well, Philip Bailey, first of all, I grew up with all the Earth, Wind & Fire albums, and I would literally daydream, and I'd open up the I Am album and the All in All album and the greatest hits, and I would look at the pictures. The music just touched my soul so deeply, and I'd go, one day I'm going to meet them. And I would daydream these things, because my mother taught me to be a dreamer, and I would be saying to myself, I'm going to be somewhere, and they're going to see me. I'm going to be sitting in first class next to them. Even though I'm poor, I'm dreaming that I'm going to be in first class, and they're just going to see me, and they're going to take a liking to me, and then we're going to be friends. And like I would imagine stuff like that with them and Michael Jackson and all that. So take you to 1981. So I'm in LA. This is, I'm down there pursuing my dream, and I hear about this concert and I hear about it on the radio. It says the concert's called Jesus at the Roxy. And then they advertise, and members of Earth, Wind & Fire, Philip Bailey, Ralph Johnson, are in this band. It's like an LA all-star band of great players featuring some of the guys from Earth, Wind & Fire. I made a U-turn on Sunset Boulevard the second I heard that. I pulled right up in front of the Roxy, $7.50, and bought my ticket. There's a picture of the ticket in the book, and so then I went there. And I went there like, I'm going to meet Philip Bailey. And so I wrote a letter to him. I had a whole letter. I sat at the front table, because it's like a club. I sat at the front table, and I had a letter addressed to him in big print. It said Philip Bailey, and I'm drinking my Coke. I'm 18 years old. He's right there on the stage, and I keep pointing to the envelope like, like this is for you, man. Like, I'm going to meet you, you know? And so the concert was amazing. The musicians were amazing. Ralph Johnson, who's one of the original Earth, Wind & Fire members and is the drummer, is playing the gig. And I wait and I wait and I look for Philip, and he's nowhere to be found. I'm the last guy in the club. Finally, I see Ralph Johnson, the drummer from Earth, Wind & Fire, and still a band member, come to the stage to talk to his drum tech. And then I made a beeline straight for him. And I just started talking to him, introduced myself. And he took a liking to me because he goes, "Oh, you're like a bold kid, man." It's like, and I'm like, what do I need to do to make it, and how do I become better like you? And he goes, "Well, are you studying with anybody?" And I'm like, "Well, not currently." And he goes, "Well, would you like to study with me?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"What? Would you really?" Like,
Wow.
the next week, I was at his house taking drum lessons from him. That year, he invited me to his birthday party, which was on the 4th of July. So I'm at now his birthday party. I'm 18 years old. He lets me bring my brother, and we're floating around in the pool with Earth, Wind & Fire, having barbecued chicken, talking about God and music.
Wow.
And then a couple years later, he goes, "I need you to go on the road with Philip. I can't do the gig. You're good enough. You're ready." And then that's how my whole career starts. So that dream, and not only that, here's what's crazy. Now I've known them since 1980. So what is that, 44 years or whatever, right? And they've been brothers all these years. Verdine calls me all the time. He never lets me off the phone without me praying for him. He was like, "I need one of them Zoro prayers, man. I need one of them Zoro prayers, man." You know, like God used me to minister to them when they were my idols. It's just this full...
One of the most influential groups in the world.
In the world, and one of the best groups in the world.
Yeah.
But it all has become full circle. Now, on the cover of the book, and they were just in concert in Sacramento, and I took a bunch of friends to see them, and I showed Ralph and Verdine. Verdine gave me a beautiful endorsement for the book, and I showed them the book, and Verdine's like, "Make sure you send me a signed copy. I need a signed copy of that thing, Z." And then I showed Ralph the cover.
You talk just like him.
Yeah. Oh, and when we talk, we have the most joyous, I wish I could record them and you could see, but we have the most joyous conversations in the world, Verdine and I, because we both are passionate guys.
Yeah.
We love fashion and we love music, and we talk about these things, and it's just, it's like bursting with energy. And it's some of the greatest experiences of my life. It's just me and Verdine talking. So anyway, so on the cover of the book, when people see it, Maria's Scarf, there's a couple of tickets, like a ticket from a New Edition concert, a Frankie Valli concert that I talk about in the book, and there's a little receipt in there. And the receipt is the drum lesson that I first took from Ralph Johnson. And it's in there with my name on it, and I paid $10. And when I showed him that, he got like teary-eyed.
Wow.
He was like, "I can't believe
awesome.
you have that." And there's a whole chapter in the book where I talk about meeting my heroes, Buddy Rich and him.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible experience. And then getting to play with Philip, so I'd be playing with him, I go, "That's the voice that I'd always imagined I'd be friends with, and now I'm playing for him."
And you're a friend.
And we're a friend, and we're still friends to this day.
Yeah.
Like he's a man of God, he's a Christian.
Yes, he is.
But there's many times I've sent him things to inspire him and to encourage him, and I sent him different Christian books, and it's just a beautiful God thing. It's just
It really
my
is.
whole life is just like the favor of God showing you that everything is possible if you believe and you dream and you just make yourself available to the Holy Spirit.
Can't let you go without talking about Lenny Kravitz.
Yes, and that's my brother for life. So in 1985, and I met him on the lawn at Beverly Hills High, where I was pretending to be a new student, and I didn't even go to school there, and that's how I met him. And then once I played with New Edition for years, and then Bobby Brown, then he got his record deal with Virgin Records, and then I met with him and Lisa Bonet at their house in Santa Monica, Venice Beach. And he was like, "Man, I got my record coming out." I was with Bobby Brown, flying high, my prerogative, 13 million albums. He's like, "But nothing will make sense, Z, if you're not in my band."
Wow.
So I literally left Bobby Brown to join my little friend Lenny, because I believed in him because he believed in me. So now we've been friends since 1980, so for 44 years. It was just this beautiful brotherly love, and now we're like these mature men. He's going to be 60, I'm 61, and it's just been this incredible friendship, and now we just have this gratitude for the path that God has taken us down. But when we make music together, it's some of the most fun music I've ever played. And the reason that I wrote the book is I spent 15 years writing it because I wanted to inspire people When people ask me, what's the book about? I say it's 4 things you'll get out of it. It's heartwarming. It's heartbreaking. It's utterly hilarious. There's passages you'll just crack up and can't even believe what you just read. And ultimately, it is hopeful. You leave with the sense of anything is possible, and everybody can find themselves in those pages, and everybody feels that way at some point. There's always stories of mothers and sons and families and struggles. It's a universal story as old as time itself, and that'll be something that I can impart to people, and forever they'll be able to be inspired, just like we were inspired by books 100 years ago and 2,000 years ago.
Zoro,
Words have power.
I appreciate you, man.
I
Appreciate the power
you.
of your hope, the power of your dream, and the power of your book, Maria's Scarf. Thank you for being on America's Hope.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been an honor and a privilege, and you're
Absolutely,
an
brother.
awesome man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
I'd like to thank our guests who appeared on tonight's program. Robert Borelli, what an incredible man who made it out of the mafia the right way, alive and well, and giving God the praise for that. And then Zoro, what an incredible drummer and an incredible story. And I want to read something out of his book in closing. It says, mothers hold their children's hands for a while, their hearts forever. Certainly, both of these men have been holding on to their mothers' hearts forever. And more importantly, they've been holding on to their faith in God forever. I think we can all learn something about these men through their profiles of hope, and that is, hope is never extinguished. Keep shining the light in darkness and have a hope that prevails. Until next time, America, good night. God bless.